We're going to start by a presentation by Dave Munger, a practical use for regional operations. The people from the Department of Forestry and everything pertaining to forest planning, everything that's done pertaining to regional operations in the different regions of Quebec. So these are the people that use it in an operational manner. And he is an analyst in geomatics, in LiDAR. He works for the Department of Forest, Wildlife and Parks, and he does management from Rivière-Péribonka to Alma. So we have to warn the translators that it's in Lac-Saint-Jean, so there's an accent. So be prepared. Yes, it's better that they know in advance. The developments that he has done in the past 5 years are used in the region of Lac-Saint-Jean, and they're used also in all of Quebec. They've been used there for several years. Now I'm letting him take the microphone. Hello, everyone. I'm very happy to be here to tell you about my hobby. That's been my hobby for the past few years. Just want to take a few seconds to thank the organizers of the event, particularly Martin, Antoine, and Monsieur Tellier. I wanted to underline the DIF, Direction of Inventory, have been very helpful, and they're a model for the department. They have very good listening capacity for their clients. So I'm going to continue. We're already a little late. So how we use LiDAR technology at the Department of Forest, Wildlife and Parks. And so we have a little image of a field technician in forestry. So we're going to start with an introduction. The basic products that were presented by Marc-Olivier, use of optimized products, optimization of LiDAR, and work in progress. So let's go ahead, because I have an accent and I speak very fast. So good luck to the translators. So let's go back in time, 2010-2011. As you know, there was a new forestry system that started being used in 2013. The department takes charge of planning, and we had a choice between fine photo interpretation of images or taking new images and doing photo interpretation. We had photogrammetry was another choice, and LiDAR. So LiDAR was by far the best and also the most expensive at the time, because it was already more expensive than photo imaging, and the processing was done externally, and it was very expensive. And so we were limited in being able to exploit LiDAR technology to its full potential. But on top of all that, it was prohibitive because it was expensive to acquire. So we had to almost abandon the entire idea because we had a lot of territory to cover, especially in region number 2. So we would have had to turn towards other technologies. So to make up for that, we developed the LiDAR suite. So we generate the basic products that are done by the management of inventory, and we also have sub-products for operations. So at that time, we were using GIS 100%. We put that in Firebases. And then with time, with the direction of the department, we looked at GG to optimize processing and to be able to convert raw data. And now we use this suite. So if we come back to today, to put you in context, when we acquire LiDAR technology, there is we also the direction of forestry intervention also must take care of the basic products and the other different products. Parallel to that, we also have to give the information to operations rapidly. We start the processing as soon as possible, immediately, and we start the planning. So usage of basic derived products, my colleague talked to you about it already. These are the most used. The strength of LiDAR is the ground models, so shading, topography, different layers. This is the basis of the work. And then we have the digital surface model. It's not used directly, but it's mostly used for analyzing scenery. What you see here was cut. It hasn't been done yet, but we have the plans. We virtually cut down the trees, and that way we can analyze the scenery and figure out, this is harmonizing tourism and forest cuts. So we can see where the tourists can see the forest cuts. So we can plan in this way, and this is a good argument for using LiDAR technology. So if we go back over the optimized products, Olivier was saying he's working right now on generating in hydrography the lakes. So this is a specific point for us. It's not the Bible either. This is not a definitive tool. We have to reposition errors that can come up. We have to make corrections, but it also generates a good hydrographic model. So we can plan roads or analyze roads. We can determine draining, dams, and often in several clicks of a mouse, we can generate what the watersheds are. So we can look at where the different dams or different bridges have to be. So Michel is going to talk about it in his next possession, but here we looked at the different ecotones, the limit of the water. So this is to facilitate cutting. And if you stay after this presentation, Michel will explain this to you. If we come back to the MHC, we have many sub-products to create digital models, the height of the canopy, vectorial zones. So we regroup different informations, different layers, different classes within the limits for different needs for our planification. It's the same thing when we look at the models of canopy height. We look at the density, and we have many sub-products, A, B, C, D, 10%, 15% for different needs. We have it in vectorial or other formats. This is part of the processing. Optimization, we can look at a density layer. We have different gradients, and we can get the images that look a lot like other images that are available in forestry. We can have a map that looks a lot like a photo interpretation. We can look at the minimal superficial areas, and we can have a vectorial image that we can use in the management systems. So it's 5-in-1 with this kind of map for 25-20 forest plots, forest stands. This layer is very useful When we compare it to MHC, yes, there are certain things that are comparable. There are also exclusions. We have to look at minimal surfaces. Those who know me know that I'm not a fan of this layer because I find it's not precise enough to make up for that. My favorite product is management by superimposition, layering. Instead of just looking at one layer, we ask ourselves, what do we want? And then we let the machine think for us. So in the example that you see here, you have different classes of height, and the way it works is that we give a classification to each class, and the lower the number, the more it's a priority. So we are looking for 1 to 5. So we are saying priority 1 is the best potential for us. And the example that I'm going to show you here is a zone of mixed forest, fragmented forest. So we qualify our model by height. I say if I show you an 18, it will have a grade of a 78 density, 70% and more, has a rate of 40. And then over top of that, you have the layer of constraints to indicate what's not accessible for cutting. And then you say, what do you propose for priority number 1? And then it will suggest what is harvestable and what meets our criteria. And if we compare that to our density height layer, you can see that in some places it's precise, but not in others. So that's the advantage. And you can see where it's green and orange, it's difficult accessibility for harvesting. And to sum things up, this is an example. This is an example of a harvest that was done. And I passed the tools over the area. And it looks like the plan was made with that method. This is what was actually harvested, and it respects the lines that had been traced in advance. So you see the top on the left. So that method worked very well for cutting. So we thought, why not use it in more precise sectors, like commercial sectors? So in the commercial works, we have to be more precise. So non-commercial work is decimeters. We can go up to 3 meters, so it's a lot more precise. We targeted the sectors that were orange, and they were priorities 1 and 2, orange and yellow. They had a good potential, commercial potential. And with LiDAR, what I was talking about with the LEOS is the need for the different varieties, the different species. So we give this information to our photo interpreter, and he draws the contours, and he says, this is what we're going to process. And then in the end, what was processed was what's outlined in purple. So it gave very good results. And we used the same method for scarifying. So we looked at this example and what the LiDAR had defined as a potential area. And then when we put different variables into the system, it gets even more precise. So with Guillaume, sometimes they need to know how rigid things are, and all that can be added into the model. And in the end, it's what has the little squares. So at that time, it hadn't been harvested yet. So it's very good very, very positive conclusions. So that sums up the information. So if we come back to the density height map, we were wondering what we could do about our problem with the operations, with the problem with the marketing, the Lumber Marketing Bureau. What we were lacking in Region 2 is often we don't have a good accessibility. It's hard to get in there to do our inventories. So some ordinary, as I could characterize them, decisions were made. So it would be important to use this precise information and to associate volumes with them. So we use 10-meter pixels. In each sector, we know the density and the height of the pixels, and we name them A, B, C, D because that's the way the inventories were done. And the premise was that for a certain sector, a certain density, there have been inventories done for many years. So for starters, we had looked at, with the management for inventories, we had looked at second, third, fourth decade, and we said yes, it's a very promising technology, and we associated ourselves with the Université Laval, Jean Bégin, among others, who will present tomorrow, to generate curves, precise curves with statistic models to attach or combine or to associate different heights. And then we have a matrix, and each matrix has a total volume for birch and poplar. We have the square decimeter for each stem, and then the raster. For each raster of 10 by 10, we have the pixels, and then on each pixel, you have all the information for the volumes that is distributed for the per species, and you have all the species that are in a different layer. So it's very precise, and within 10 meters, 10 square meters, it's very precise. So we make a vectorial layer that brings all this information together, and we decrease the number of polygons, but we decrease very little the level of precision. So 4.2 hectares. For 4 acres, you'll have 5,857 polygons. The difference for the product is almost the same, so there's not a big difference between both. So this product is used for planning operations, and the Bureau for their sales. For their auctions. It's always LiDAR technology is also used with inventory in the field, on the terrain. So it's very fast. It's done in a couple of minutes, and it's very precise. And for precision, you'll have to wait for the other presentations. They will give you more information about that. And the Martin, I don't know if he's here, but he's going to be stressed out because I'm saying that he's one of the best. So we have the software, LiDAR suite. We use the statistic models that are developed by Université Laval University, and then we use the forest maps and the LiDAR data, and we combine all that. That's how we have our derived dendrometric products, raster or polygonal. Future perspectives, if we look at them rapidly, localization, operational legacies, the numbers that we have today, the laws that we have today in the field, where we do the cutting, we can say 5% of a territory Right now, the people who do the planning, they leave it at 5%, but sometimes it's 7 or 8 because there's some that hasn't been planned, and so in the end, often we do more than what we planned. So the goal of the project is to be able to locate before we cut what's going to be left over after we cut. So you know how we have the 20 meter spaces that we leave that stay after we cut. So direction of operations, perhaps if we are at 7 and we want to reach 5, well, we're going to have to eliminate 2%. Other works that are being presently done, we have you're going to have a presentation about this, the automated passage on the roads pertaining to a model of costs. Now, this is very important for me because with sustainable development, we have the department that sometimes tends to forget it, but environmental, wildlife, and economic. So economic with data like LiDAR data is where we know what kind of forest cover, we have digitized models of the terrain. It's easy to predict the cost. If we want to put a polygon of protection, we can do it very precisely. So that's, economically speaking, we can quantify environmental protection. And what has been done by LiDAR, you can see on the screen since the beginning of the presentation, since the beginning of the day as well. There are several aspects of the LiDAR that improve the variables. Regional operations, we need, I spoke with Michel recently, his need is real, pertaining to representation for the different species. It's 10%. Michel was talking about 5%. There's an indicator of the vigor of the stems of the different layers. So once we have all that, it would be the photo interpreter, if they put aside all the rest of the information, perhaps we could have the same number of polygons. Perhaps they would be more precise and better adapted to our needs. So to conclude, LiDAR opens the door on a variety of possibilities, and the Department of Forest, Wildlife, and Parks can be proactive. Now it's up to us to use these possibilities. My second conclusion, I thought it was good. These are 4 astronomers. They work in the United States and California. I watched a documentary about them. I think it's the one in the red shirt that said, death is important because these people are old and they're getting closer to that point of their lives. He was saying death is important for the evolution of the species. So I thought that was very strong to ascertain. As we get older, we get rigid and we get set in our ways. And when we die, we give the chance to the younger generation to take their place because they aren't yet set in their ways. So don't be too anxious for us to die. No, that's not what I'm going to say. But stay open-minded and take advantage of this day to look at all the technology that exists and look at all the possibilities for improvement. Think about forestry, what it's been through. These new technologies will probably revolutionize forestry in the next few years. Thank you.
We have 5 minutes for questions. You can stay here, Dave. Okay, we have one question. I wanted to ask that question since this morning. Thank you for giving me that opportunity. That was really interesting what you presented. I'm really impressed this morning. We're convinced about the LiDAR. We've been using it for a long time. We're using in some decision-making tools. We see this elsewhere, but stand tables or table of forest stocks, is that part of the analyses that will come when we look at the value chain concept? Stand maps, map of the forest stands. Our industries are processing stems. I had a short discussion this morning with you about that. What's in the drawing boards? What's in the plans? What Dave presented, what Martin Riopel will or has developed and will present tomorrow, that's one of the applications that we're working on. We also work parallel to that to create with our inventory approaches. We want to couple the temporaries, the LiDAR, and the forest cut maps to have more precise volume data. So we're working on these two avenues. Something else I could say is that there are other developments that are currently going on. A third component would be a map somewhat similar to what Dave was mentioning, a superimposed map. You have three main avenues and a third one that's currently being developed. Thank you. Another question?
D'abord, félicitations.
First of all, congratulations for the great scientific breakthroughs, technological breakthroughs for the Department of Forests in other areas. Are they at the same level as you are in the Lac-Saint-Jean area with all your analysis method, classification methods, deliverables in terms of data? Right now, in our region, we were the ones who had developed the suite, the software suite for optimization, for operational optimization. We made it available a few years ago to all departments. Right now, the development is mostly in terms of dendrometric volumes. Martin will talk to you about that. We're working mostly on regions 5 and 6, and we want to extend this into other areas, more to the south. But it's just a question of time before it's also available in the south. We'll see the limitations to those applications, but there is a possibility of bringing them up to the same level. It's up to people to get involved. That's the goal of my last slide. I understand that Lac-Saint-Jean is ahead of the other regions of Quebec. Is that possible? Well, of course, we had big needs because those are large, inaccessible territories, so we pushed a lot on that. So Lac-Saint-Jean is ahead. There's quite a lot ahead in that sense. But there are several regions that are getting into the boat right now, the Region 9, Region 10, Region 4 also. It's coming. There's a slight delay, but we'll all be at the same level soon. That's what we hope for. Thank you.